They say you don't really know someone until you've seen them Venmo a grad student at midnight with a winky face. Which is exactly how this whole disaster started, with a $75 payment labeled for tutoring winking-faced. Tutoring. Right. Because when I think of academic enrichment, I definitely think of late-night mobile payment apps and emojis that belong in a frat group chat. But let's rewind for a second. My name's Noah. I teach high school media arts, lighting design, film editing, sound mixing. You know, all the flashy stuff kids want to learn when they realize they're not going pro in basketball. I'm not famous, but I'm known enough around here to get invited to PDA fundraisers and asked to fix broken projector cards like it's still 2004. My wife, now there's the punchline, is Dr. Melanie Cross, Associate Professor of Cognitive Psychology at Wexley College. If that name doesn't ring a bell, congrats. You're not wasting money on a liberal arts education. Melanie's the kind of academic who keeps a bookshelf organized by citation count and has serious opinions about fonts. She teaches courses with names like Cognition and the Embodied Mind and refers to her undergrads as emerging scholars. I used to think it was charming. Then I realized it was just code for, please stroke my ego while I ignore your email. We'd been married 7 years. No kids, which was more of a slow fade than a hard no. The marriage worked like a quiet roommate agreement. She made tenure. I made quirky student films with titles like How to Break Up Using Only Pizza Boxes. We shared a house, a joint checking account, and occasionally a laugh. Things were fine. Until that Venmo popped up on my phone. See, we'd linked our accounts years ago to pay the mortgage. So when Melanie sent someone named JWill94 $75 for tutoring winking face, I got the notification. My thumb froze on the screen like it had seen a ghost. First thought, typo. Second thought, prank. Third thought, you don't use that emoji by accident. I didn't say anything right away. Maybe I should have. But something about the smugness of it all, the emoji, the amount, the audacity, made me pause. So I let it sit. Like sour milk you keep in the fridge just to see how bad it'll get. Later that night, Melanie sent me a selfie from her office. She was working late on a grant proposal. Burning the midnight oil, she said. In the photo, she had that I'm serious but cute expression she uses when she wants me to notice her new lipstick without mentioning it. Her desk lamp lit her face, and there were 2 mugs on her desk. Not one, 2. One said Wexley Women Lead. The other said, I got psyched, with a little neuron on it. What caught my eye wasn't the mugs. It was the blurred reflection in the office window behind her. A male torso, shirtless, lean, athletic build. Not me. Now look, I teach visual storytelling. I know lens distortion, reflection artifacts, ghosting, you name it. I also know what a shirtless dude looks like standing a foot behind my wife. And that was no artifact. Still, I needed more. So I did what any mildly paranoid, technically competent husband would do. I used my school's facial recognition software. It's not as dramatic as it sounds, just a classroom tool I use to teach AI ethics. It can map faces from video frames and cross-reference a small database. Mostly for fun. But tonight, it had a purpose. I fed it 3 more selfies Melanie had sent me over the past few weeks. Casual shots, her at her desk, at a cafe, once in her car. In each photo, I zoomed in. Enhanced. Looked for mirrors, windows, laptop screens. Every time, the same guy showed up. Shirtless once, partially visible in a mirror another time, and, jackpot, fully reflected in her laptop screen in the cafe photo. The software flagged him, Jason Willis. Age 29. Teaching assistant, grad program in behavioral neuroscience. I knew the name because I'd seen it before, in our kitchen, on a crumpled mailer from Wexley. Jason Willis, TA office schedule. It had a lipstick mark on it. At the time, I assumed Melanie had been holding it for a student. Or blowing her nose. Suddenly, all the little quirks lined up like a constellation. Her insisting on walking to campus alone. Locking her laptop with a new password. The sudden professional boundaries talk when I suggested attending her department mixer. And still, I didn't confront her. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't hurt most in the discovery. It hurts in the silence that follows, when you realize the game's been going on longer than you thought, and you're the only one who didn't get a turn. So I got methodical. I started collecting Venmo receipts, geotagged images from her Instagram stories, timestamps from her faculty yoga nights, audio snippets from our home assistant. Turns out, She liked to ask Alexa to play the mood playlist right around the time I was teaching fourth period. And then, the kicker. I found a shared Google Doc titled Birthday Bash, Melanie 39. It was a plan for her upcoming surprise party, hosted by one of her fellow professors. I was on the guest list, barely. But more importantly, so was the department chair, the provost, a donor or two, and, naturally, Jason Willis. I read the guest list 3 times. Then I shut my laptop and smiled. Because if Melanie wanted a celebration of her academic legacy, I'd make sure she got one. Just not the kind she expected. Planning a birthday party for your cheating wife is one of those things that sounds like the setup to a bad sitcom. But trust me, there's nothing comedic about watching a woman you once loved casually burn your marriage to the ground and then expect you to hold the lighter for the candles. I wasn't mad, not really. I was curious. Like a scientist who finds mold on bread and decides to culture it rather than throw it out. The party was scheduled for a Saturday evening, 2 weeks out. Melanie thought it was a surprise bash orchestrated by her department, her adoring colleagues, her bright-eyed students, maybe a trustee or two for good measure. She had no idea that I discovered the digital footprints of her extracurriculars, or that I was now treating this celebration as the stage for her swan song. But before we get to that delicious moment of theatrical revenge, let's talk about the prep work. Because, believe me, it took some. First step, data collection. I teach high school, which means I'm one step removed from a generation that documents everything. I've taught kids to edit video, analyze metadata, manipulate audio tracks, clean up forensic evidence like they're prepping for a Netflix docuseries. I know what can be done with just a few clicks, and more importantly, what looks convincing on screen. I started by building a timeline. I pulled every Venmo transaction she'd ever made to Jason. Thanks for the help. Brainstorming snacks. For the vibes, face blowing a kiss. Subtle, but damning. Each one was tagged with a date and time. I matched them against the photos she'd sent me or posted publicly. That alone gave me over a dozen data points. Enough to establish a pattern. Then I dug into geotags. See, most people don't realize their phones track everything. Even if you turn off location sharing, apps like Instagram and Facebook cache metadata, hidden breadcrumbs that tell you exactly where a photo was taken. I used a metadata extraction tool to pull GPS coordinates from her selfies, stories, and even screenshots she'd sent me during department meetings. One in particular stood out. A photo she'd texted me from what she claimed was a Wexley staff workshop. The background showed a whiteboard with half-erased notes about cognitive load theory. But the GPS tag? It placed her at a Marriott 14 miles off campus. On a Thursday afternoon. During office hours. Classic. But the crown jewel, the piece that made the whole thing sing, was the facial recognition. Remember that shirtless guy in the reflection? I took that blurry window image and ran it through my classroom software, frame by painstaking frame. I cross-referenced it with a campus directory photo of Jason, then ran that against every recent selfie of Melanie where he might be lurking in the periphery. I had 6 positive matches. 6. In one, you could even make out his name stitched on the breast pocket of a gym bag. So now I had receipts, geotags, facial confirmation, and timestamp texts. But this wasn't about building a legal case. This was about storytelling. About crafting the kind of narrative that punches you in the gut and leaves a handprint. I opened Premiere Pro and started editing. I built it like one of my student documentaries. Clean, clinical, slow burning. The kind of thing that starts off sweet and nostalgic before veering into emotional sawdust. The first 30 seconds? A slideshow of Melanie's academic achievements. Photos of her in graduation robes, giving lectures, posing with colleagues. Inspirational music playing underneath. She changed the lives of so many young minds. The title card read. Then came the twist. Cue a slow zoom on the tutoring winking face, Venmo message. The music shifted, minor key, something brooding. Cut to a screenshot of a calendar overlay. Tuesday nights blocked out with office hours. Overlaid with Marriott Bonvoy digital check-in confirmed. Then, the reflections, zooms and highlights. A subtle motion graphic drawing attention to Jason's figure in each shot. His hand on her shoulder in one. His face barely visible in another. A timestamp flickering like a heartbeat in the corner. And finally, audio. This was tricky. Alexa doesn't record indefinitely, but you can access fragments. I had one clip, 10 seconds, where she said, "Jason, lock the door this time, okay?" It wasn't much, but paired with everything else, it painted a very clear picture. I titled the project, Dr. Melanie Cross, a retrospective. Now, some people might say this was cruel, that it was beneath me, that I should have just divorced her quietly and moved on. But those people haven't been made a fool of in 1080p. Those people haven't watched their spouse erase them from their life while asking them to fix the Wi-Fi. Besides, Melanie had always loved attention. I was just giving her the kind she never asked for. The week leading up to the party, I played it cool. Still brought her coffee in the mornings. Asked about her classes. Let her babble about budget proposals and student evaluations. She was glowing, probably thinking about the affair, or maybe just the upcoming party. Either way, she looked like a woman who had no idea a piano was about to fall on her. I told her I couldn't attend the party because of a school board meeting. She looked disappointed, but didn't press. "You'll be there in spirit," she said. "Oh, Melanie, I'll be there in full HD." On the day of the event, I dressed up like I was going to the meeting I'd lied about. I even parked in front of the board office for 20 minutes, just in case Melanie had someone watching. Paranoia makes you thorough. Then I made my way to the party venue. It was one of those university event spaces, faux wood floors, bland abstract art on the walls, big glass windows nobody ever cleaned properly, tables with linen cloths, a buffet line, faculty wearing their best cardigans. I arrived just before the speech portion of the evening. Melanie was beaming. She wore a deep green dress that she always claimed made her feel professorial but dangerous. She hugged a donor, sipped white wine. She had no idea that the projector had already been queued up, that the USB drive I dropped off earlier was labeled Surprise Video, Play Me. When the time came, the lights dimmed. Her department chair stood up and introduced the presentation as a touching tribute. He smiled at her. She smiled back. Then the screen flickered to life. Her face dropped after the first 15 seconds. The moment the Venmo receipt appeared, you could feel the room hold its breath. When the music turned cold, someone gasped. By the time the first reflection zoom hit, Melanie had stood up. By the time the audio clip played, she was pale. By the time Jason's full face appeared, she was gone. Heels clicking across the wood floor, out the back exit like she was fleeing a fire. I let the video run. People didn't move. A few looked away. Most didn't. The last frame lingered, a quote from one of her own lectures. "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." Fade to black. The lights came on. The department chair's face was ashen. Jason was nowhere to be seen. I stood quietly at the back, arms folded, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. And yet, the best part? Still hadn't happened. Because the university? They take ethics violations very seriously. And anonymous packages, when timed right, go a long way. You'd think the aftermath of something like that, public humiliation, institutional exposure, the social equivalent of a controlled demolition, would be loud. But it wasn't. Not really. It was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. More like the eerie stillness after a bomb's gone off and all that's left is dust and ringing ears and people blinking through the smoke, trying to figure out what just happened. The next morning, I made pancakes. I'm not even kidding. I got up, cracked 3 eggs into a bowl, whisked them into the batter, and flipped flapjacks like it was just another Sunday in suburbia. The coffee machine hissed. The butter sizzled. It was domestic theater, me, alone in the kitchen, pretending I hadn't just turned my wife's academic life into an avant-garde revenge film. Melanie didn't come home that night, or the night after. Her name was still on the mailbox, her cardigan still draped over the chair in our bedroom, but she'd vanished like a pulled plug. I checked the campus faculty site later that week. Her profile was still up, but someone had flagged it for review. Her scheduled lectures were being reassigned. A few of her colleagues, at least the ones who hadn't made a beeline for the shrimp tray during the video, had started removing posts with her tagged on social media. One of them even changed a caption from #WomenInSTM to just "Great panel tonight." Cold, but not as cold as the email I got from Wexley College's ethics committee. "Dear Mr. Cross, we have received materials regarding a potential violation of the university's faculty conduct policy involving Dr. Melanie Cross. This includes what appears to be a breach of the student-instructor relationship boundaries outlined in Section 4.6 of our Code of Ethics." It went on, full of bureaucratic phrasing that somehow made what she'd done sound almost elegant. Impropriety, conflict of interest, Potential exploitation of power dynamics. You know, the usual academic euphemisms for, you were sleeping with the kid grading your midterms. I didn't respond, of course. I didn't need to. I wasn't listed as the source of the video. That little USB stick? Delivered anonymously. And the hard copy packet? Sent via campus mail, complete with a cover letter posing as a concerned third party with deep respect for academic standards. Never underestimate the power of office stationery and a well-timed anonymous tip. Meanwhile, Jason disappeared from campus entirely. One day he was TAing Psych 101 and taking smug little lap around the quad walks with Melanie. The next, he was ghosting group projects and vanishing from online forums. I later learned, through a very juicy student subreddit, that he'd been placed on academic probation for inappropriate conduct. His stipend was frozen. His thesis advisor dropped him. Melanie, for her part, finally reached out 6 days later. It came in the form of a voicemail. 1 minute and 43 seconds of half-composed breathiness. Her voice was cracked, like she'd been crying or yelling, or both. Maybe at Jason. Maybe at herself. Maybe into the void where her tenure used to live. Noah, I don't know what you think you know. I mean, I get that you're hurt, but this, what you did, it's cruel. It's not fair. I deserve at least a conversation, not a takedown in front of my colleagues. You crossed a line. A pause. Sniffles. Then, I made a mistake. I know that. But we've spent years together. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I need to understand why you'd want to destroy me like that. You always said you loved me. Destroy her? No. See, destruction implies something sudden. I didn't drop a wrecking ball on our life. I unzipped it, inch by inch, until it fell apart under its own hypocrisy. I replayed that voicemail twice, then deleted it. Didn't save a copy. I didn't need to hear her try to rewrite the narrative. Melanie had always been a master of self-justification. That's the thing about people like her. They can convince themselves of anything if it makes them look smart and complicated and tortured enough. She probably told herself she was following her passion, liberating herself from a stagnant relationship. That sleeping with a student wasn't wrong, it was complicated. That love isn't linear. That she was still a feminist icon because she felt empowered doing it. Honestly, I didn't care what story she told herself anymore. I told mine, and it was better. But the real twist, the part one didn't see coming, was what happened next. About a week after the party, I got a call from Wexley College's media department. Now, keep in mind, I'm not affiliated with them. I'm a high school teacher. I help 17-year-olds make horror shorts with ketchup blood and unlicensed drone footage. So when I got a call from Dr. Henry Lehrman, head of Wexley's digital media initiative, I assumed it was a wrong number. It wasn't. Apparently, someone at the party had seen the video and been impressed. Not with the subject matter, obviously, but with the craftsmanship. Lehrman said, and I quote, "It was unsettling, cinematic, and emotionally devastating, like a good psychological thriller, but also a training module on what not to do in academia." They wanted to talk, so I met with them. Not on campus, too messy, but over lunch at a quiet bistro downtown. Lehrman and another faculty member from communications. They asked about my editing process, my approach to digital storytelling, my philosophy on narrative structure. I was polite, careful, didn't gloat, just laid it out like any good teacher would. 2 days later, I got an offer. Guest lecturer position. Fall semester. Digital ethics and narrative media. Apparently, they'd recently had an opening. Let that sink in. Melanie, suspended pending review. Jason, blacklisted. And me? Offered a spot in the very department that used to name drop her at fundraisers. I didn't even have to apply. Her disgrace opened a door, and I walked through it wearing my nicest tie. I didn't tell Melanie. Why would I? Let her find out the way I did, through passive notification. A name on a flyer. A post in the faculty group chat she's now locked out of. At this point, you might be wondering how I feel. Vindicated? Triumphant? Nah. Mostly, I just feel done. Done lying to myself about who she was. Done pretending I was lucky to be in her orbit. Done with the self-help voice in my head that said, maybe this is your fault too. It wasn't. She made 1,000 little choices. I made one big one. And now? Now I've got one more part of the plan left. Not for her. For me. Because while she's scrambling for damage control, I've been working on a second project. Something more personal. Something I'll unveil not in a lecture hall, but somewhere a little more intimate. a little more final. Because if you think that video was the end of the story, you've clearly never watched until the credits roll. There's something poetic about turning someone's identity into a weapon, especially when that identity was always a performance to begin with. Melanie wasn't just a professor. She was the professor, the feminist firebrand, the campus icon, the woman who quoted Simone de Beauvoir during brunch and signed her emails warmly, Dr. Cross. She curated her entire existence like a dissertation defense, methodical, polished, full of jargon that disguised the hollow center. She built herself a brand, and I decided to dismantle it, piece by piece. Now, I should clarify, this wasn't about ruining her life. If it was, I could have posted that video online. I could have sent it to the student newspaper, tagged the university president, and turned her into a meme by Monday morning. But viral shame is cheap. It fades. What I wanted was better. I wanted legacy erosion. So I started with the one thing she valued more than tenure, her reputation among the young women she mentored. Melanie ran a campus organization called FORC, Female Outreach for Research, Cognition, and Empowerment. Real mouthful, I know. It was basically a monthly workshop where she taught undergrads how to navigate academia while dodging creepy professors, systemic bias, and internalized patriarchy. It was her baby, her movement, her cathedral of performative sisterhood. And wouldn't you know it, one of the members, a senior named Ava, happened to be a former student of mine. She was in my AV club 4 years ago. Quiet, bright, detail-obsessed. The kind of kid who alphabetized her USB drives. I emailed her. No subject line. Just, "Hey Ava, long time. I have something you'll want to see. Confidential, but it affects your organization. Interested?" She replied in 6 minutes. We met at a coffee shop near campus. I brought my laptop and a flash drive. Didn't say a word until we were both sitting, drinks untouched. Then I played the video. Not the party cut. A new one. A stripped-down version I'd made just for this moment. It opened on a black screen with one sentence. What would you do if your mentor was everything she warned you about? Then the Venmo trail. The photos. The audio. And finally, a title card. Dr. Melanie Cross and the Power Dynamics of Hypocrisy. Ava sat still through the whole thing. No gasps. No interruption. Just wide eyes and a twitching jaw. When it ended, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath underwater. "Is this real?" she asked. I nodded. "And she was sleeping with a student?" she said. I nodded again. She looked at her coffee like it had betrayed her. She used to tell us stories about professors who pulled this exact kind of crap. She made us promise we'd report them if we ever saw it happen. "I know," I said. "That's why I called you." Ava didn't say much after that. Just pocketed the flash drive and promised to handle it. And she did. 3 days later, the FORC Instagram account posted a statement. Effective immediately, Dr. Melanie Cross is no longer affiliated with our organization. We are deeply disturbed by credible evidence of her unethical relationship with a student under her academic authority. Our commitment is to protect, not perpetuate, the systems we oppose. It went viral in the campus bubble. The comments were savage. Wow, the irony. Girl boss gone predator? So much for empowerment. Hot take. Patriarchy didn't do this. Melanie did. Within a week, posters started showing up around campus. Flyers stapled to bulletin boards, stuck in bathroom stalls. They had her face, pulled from the university directory, next to quotes from her own lectures. Power is the lens through which we must examine all relationships. Intimacy without integrity is just manipulation. The worst betrayal is the one you justify. Each poster had a QR code at the bottom. It linked to my video. Again, I wasn't the one doing the distributing. I didn't have to. I'd handed the weapon to the right people. People who felt betrayed. People who had once believed in her. The university tried to get ahead of it. They issued a generic statement. "We are conducting a thorough review of these allegations." But the damage was done. Melanie wasn't just under investigation now. She was radioactive. No student wanted to work with her. No faculty member wanted to co-publish with her. One donor even pulled funding from her grant program. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, it did. I got a letter in the mail. Real mail. Stamped and sealed. From the dean of the School of Media Studies at Wexley. Not the same folks who offered me the guest lecture gig. This was someone higher up. The letter thanked me for my informal yet impactful contribution to institutional accountability and invited me to speak at their fall symposium on ethics in media. A paid gig. Panelist status. Keynote slot. Melanie had applied to speak at that same symposium every year for the past 5 years. She'd never been accepted. I didn't rub it in. I didn't have to. Her silence was loud enough. She stopped reaching out after the voicemail. No texts. No emails. Just a lawyer, eventually, sending me the standard divorce paperwork. No fight. No alimony. No note tucked inside. It was all so anticlimactic. Which is why, maybe, I felt a little restless. Like the movie was over, but I hadn't seen the final frame. So I made one more video. This one wasn't for her, or the school, or the internet. It was for me. It started with a shot of our living room. The bookshelf she curated, the ugly modern lamp I always hated, the coffee table covered in sticky notes and unread journals. Then I panned slowly across the space. Cut to a close-up of our wedding photo. Us on a dock, lake in the background, both of us laughing. I let that image linger. Then I overlaid it with footage from the party. Her face when the video started. Her walking out. Her back to the camera. Fade to black. Then my voice, calm, steady, a little tired. This is what happens when truth becomes inconvenient. When people build shrines to themselves and expect you to keep lighting the candles even after the roof's on fire. But shrines fall. Stories change. And sometimes, the quiet guy with the camera isn't just filming. He's directing. Final frame, a white screen. Text, "Goodbye, Dr. Cross." I watched it once. Then I deleted it. Not out of mercy, but because I didn't need it anymore. Melanie had built her life around being seen, being adored, being untouchable. Now she was just a name in a scandal. A cautionary tale whispered in faculty lounges and student group chats. A ghost in a green dress who used to talk about power like she didn't know what it felt like to be powerless. And me? I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was done. I packed the last of her things into a storage box, left it on the porch, sent her a photo of the label, Dr. Cross, past contents. No caption. She didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because the best revenge isn't rage. It's removal. It's showing them what they look like without the mirror you used to hold up for them. And when they're finally forced to face that emptiness, they realize the worst betrayal wasn't what you did to them. It's what they did to themselves. The thing they never tell you about revenge is that once you've done it, really done it, the silence afterward is louder than the applause ever would have been. No parade. No confetti. Just a quiet house and an unmade bed where her pillow still had the faint scent of shampoo and shame. You don't feel victorious. You feel finished. Like you turned in a final exam you spent months preparing for, and now there's nothing left to study. After the party video, the campus purge, the FORC implosion, and the keynote offer that practically gift-wrapped itself, I thought I was done. The match had been struck, the room had burned down, and all that remained were the ashes and a faint smell of toasted narcissism. But something lingered. Not regret. Not guilt. Just a loose thread. Something unfinished. It was a Saturday morning when it hit me. I was driving past Wexley's campus, something I usually avoided, and I saw a faculty spotlight poster still hanging on a corkboard by the student center. It had Melanie's face on it. Big smile, arms crossed like she was daring the world to challenge her authority. The words "trailblazing scholar" were printed beneath her image. That was the thread. So I parked the car, walked over, and yanked the poster down. She'd been erased from the classroom, the organization, the grant circuits, the upcoming symposium. But the iconography was still there. The myth. The carefully constructed projection of virtue that still lingered in hallways and promotional material, like cologne on a borrowed scarf. Melanie didn't just crave validation. She manufactured it. She'd spent years planting quotes in campus newsletters, giving sound bites to podcasts, curating a trail of intellectual breadcrumbs that always led back to the same glowing conclusion. She was the standard. And that's what I hadn't touched yet. The archive. The myth of Melanie Cross. That afternoon, I started digging. The internet forgets nothing, but it certainly loses track of things when you start turning over stones. Her TEDx talk from 5 years ago, still on YouTube, hidden in plain sight. The audio quality was poor, and the editing was garbage. The camera cut away from her right as she hit every fake empowerment punchline. But it was enough. I downloaded it. Same with the student testimonials on the university's media server. Clips of former advisees praising her commitment to ethical mentorship. Ironic, really. I compiled everything. Photos, quotes, essays, think pieces, even a nauseating personal blog she abandoned in 2018 called Dr. M Writes Back. All of it went into a new timeline. Not for a smear piece. That part was done. This was for something different. A slow dissection. A reveal. Something surgical. A documentary. I called it Persona non grata, the making and unmaking of Dr. Melanie Cross. Opening scene. A shot of her lecture hall, empty. The chairs arranged in rows like soldiers waiting for orders that would never come. Voiceover. They say the line between performance and identity is where most people lose themselves. For Melanie Cross, that line was where she built her career and where it all came undone. I structured it like a profile piece. First act, rise to prominence. Photos from her postdoc days, interviews she gave at conferences, awards she collected like trading cards. I didn't alter anything. No need to. The self-importance practically oozed off the screen. Second act, contradictions. Lecture clips cut against Venmo receipts. Her quotes about boundaries layered over the sound of her voice asking Jason to make sure no one sees us. And intercut throughout, campus voices, students, colleagues, critics, responding not with outrage, but disappointment. I tracked down an old grad student of hers named Eliza. She was hesitant to talk at first, but I showed her part of the original video. Her mouth pressed into a thin line, and she finally said, "I'm not surprised. We all knew she played favorites. We just didn't know how far it went." That quote made the cut. By the third act, the narrative turned. The music changed. The footage shifted from grainy clips to wide, still shots, cold campus buildings, lonely lecture halls, posters half torn down. A visual echo of someone fading into irrelevance. The final scene was just a black screen. A single line of text faded in. It's not what you preach. It's what you practice when no one's watching. And then, just for the ones who knew, a post-credit flash. The original selfie she sent me. The one with Jason's reflection in the window. This time zoomed in. Paused. No text. Just the image, frozen like a crime scene. I didn't upload the documentary anywhere public. I submitted it to Wexley's media archive under a pseudonym, A.J. Holloway. Just initials. Just a whisper. Something to sit there quietly, like a loaded trap door. It wasn't about audience reach anymore. It was about permanence. Melanie could scrub her name from campus orgs, dodge interviews, rebrand herself on LinkedIn as a consultant. But this was the ghost of her credibility, archived and cataloged in the place she once ruled. A monument to her own hypocrisy, disguised as a case study. I burned a copy to Blu-ray, labeled it Cross, Legacy Review, left it in her campus mailbox. She wouldn't know where it came from, but she'd know who. I heard through a colleague, someone neutral, that Melanie had taken an extended leave of absence. She was considering moving. West Coast, maybe. Somewhere with sun and startup culture, and people who'd never heard of Jason or the cognitive sciences faculty at Wexley. Fine by me. But here's the twist I didn't expect. About 2 weeks after I submitted the documentary, I got an email. Subject line: Ethics and Storytelling, course proposal accepted. Wexley wanted me to develop a full semester-long curriculum. A permanent slot. My own course. My own title. Professor Noah Cross. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I laughed. Because of course, her name was still on the paperwork. Cross. A small, final irony. I said yes, but I requested the course be retitled The Power of Truth in Narrative Media. No egos. No icons. No myth-making. Just story. That's all I ever wanted, really. Not revenge. Not fame. Just to tell the truth. Unvarnished. Unedited. Unafraid. And if Melanie became collateral damage in the process, well, she should have chosen a better storyline. One where she didn't cast herself as the hero and forget who was holding the camera. Some stories end with a kiss. Others end with a gunshot, or a wedding, or some poetic nonsense about sunrise and healing. Mine ends in a faculty break room, with a lukewarm coffee and a man named Dean Holloway telling me I've got a real future here. He doesn't know the irony of his last name, of course. A.J. Holloway was the alias I used to submit the documentary that all but sealed Melanie's fate. There's something satisfying about that. Like the universe wanted to sign off on my work with a little inside joke. I just smiled and nodded. By then, Melanie had been gone for months. No resignation email. No farewell speech. No last strut down the psychology hallways she once treated like her personal catwalk. One day, the nameplate on her door disappeared. A week later, her faculty webpage 404D. I heard she moved to Portland. Or maybe Santa Fe. She's probably selling herself as an academic consultant or emotional intelligence strategist or whatever new age, soft focus label lets her pretend the past never happened. But this campus? This was mine now. It started with the guest lectures, then a course, then full-time adjunct. Not glamorous, but honest. No titles, no feigned reverence. No one pretending they're saving the world one peer-reviewed paper at a time. Just students, stories, and the truth, as sharp and clean as I could make it. I taught my first session of The Power of Truth in Narrative Media on a rainy Thursday. 21 students showed up. 4 were journalism majors. 7 came from the creative writing program. One girl in the front row wore a FORC pin on her backpack, but she didn't mention Melanie, and I didn't ask. We started with the basics: structure, pacing, how to spot the difference between a story that's true and one that's convenient. Then we got into deeper waters: how narratives protect the guilty, how framing makes monsters look like martyrs, how sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is tell the truth too clearly. They listened. They wrote. They asked questions that made me proud. And then, 2 weeks into the semester, I got a letter. Not an email, not a DM, a real letter, in an envelope, delivered to my faculty mailbox. No return address, no name on the front. Just, to Noah. I opened it like you'd open a bomb. Inside was a single sheet of stationery. White. Smooth. University issued. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Melanie's. Neat. Elegant. Practiced, like everything about her. It read, "Noah, I've watched the video, the documentary, the rest. You were always better at seeing the truth than I gave you credit for. I won't defend myself. I know you wouldn't believe it even if I did. But I want you to know you were right. About me. About the lies. About what I built. I thought I was the architect. I thought I could control the story. I forgot who edits the film. I'm sorry. Not because I lost. Not because I got caught. Because you deserved better. M." I stared at the page for a long time. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't self-pity. It wasn't even closure. It was a footnote. One last citation in a story she no longer had the right to tell. I didn't respond. I burned it in the sink. Not because I hated her. Because I wanted to make sure it wouldn't be read by anyone else. Because her words, finally, were just for me. And they didn't deserve to live beyond the moment. I closed the lid of the sink. Rinsed the ashes down the drain. Went back to the lecture hall. And I kept teaching. Because that's the thing about stories. You don't have to be the villain in someone else's book forever. Eventually, you can write a new chapter. One where you're not the betrayed husband. Not the fool. Not the man who got left behind. Just a man who saw what was real and chose to tell the truth anyway. That's the most dangerous thing you can do. You know, tell the truth. Not scream it. Not wave it around like a flag. Just lay it down, clean and quiet, and let it do what it does best. Expose. Reframe. Replace the lie with something uncomfortably clear. That's what I did. And Melanie? She's just a ghost now. A blurred figure in the background of a reflection, arms around someone she shouldn't have touched, still looking for a version of herself that never really existed. The footage remains. The story's locked. And the credits? They rolled a long time ago. But I'll leave you with one final shot. One I didn't put in the documentary. Too personal. Too sharp. It's her, from the birthday party, right before the video played. The camera caught her smiling, mid-laugh, holding a glass of wine. She's surrounded by people, but she's already alone. Freeze frame. Zoom in. Watch the realization creep into her face as the projector flickers to life. That's not rage. That's not fear. That's recognition. She's about to meet the real story, and she doesn't even know she's the ending. End. Subscribe to the channel